At the supermarket, I paid for my frail elderly neighbor's groceries. She suddenly gripped my hand hard and whispered, "When your son-in-law leaves town, don't go into his garage. You're in danger." I thought it was just confused old lady talk and laughed it off. But when he really did leave town, I opened that garage door anyway and nearly lost my mind at what I found inside. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Sylvester Woods. I'm 68 years old, living in Portland, Oregon, in the Eastmoreland neighborhood. Spent 40 years as a woodworker, cabinet maker specifically, before selling my share of the business 5 years back. Always thought I'd built something solid. Turns out wood isn't the only thing that rots from the inside. My daughter Kristen moved back into my house 2 years ago with her husband Matthew. At first I was happy about it. The place felt too empty after I retired, and having family around seemed right. Kristen was 35 then, Matthew 37. They'd hit some financial difficulties. Matthew's words, delivered with that salesman smile of his. I didn't ask questions. What father would turn away his only child? But Kristen wasn't the girl I raised anymore. The daughter who used to help me in the workshop, who'd sit for hours watching me restore antique furniture, asking endless questions about wood grain and joinery, she was gone. This new Kristen had sharp edges. Her eyes would follow me around the house with a calculating look I recognized from estate sales, the way people sized up furniture before making lowball offers. Matthew was worse, charming as a snake oil salesman, always calling me Dad with just a touch too much familiarity. He worked in sales, office equipment, he said, though I never saw him bring home much money. What I did see was the way he'd walk through my house, like he was already measuring it for new carpet. The way he'd pick up my restored pieces, a 19th century secretary desk, a Victorian side table, and casually ask what they were worth. The hints started small. Kristen mentioning over coffee that the house was too big for one person. Matthew suggesting I should think about downsizing, something easier to maintain. They never said the word inheritance out loud, but it hung in the air like sawdust after cutting. Then came the morning of February 3rd. Just a regular Tuesday. I'd driven to Fred Meyer on Southeast McLaughlin for groceries. Still do my own shopping, always have. The store was quiet, mid-morning lull. I was loading bags into my cart when I noticed Mrs. Eleanor Clark at the register ahead of me. Eleanor Clark had lived next door for 30 years. She was 82 now, moving slower than she used to, arthritis making her hands shake. I watched her fumble with her wallet, saw the cashier's impatient expression as the line built up behind her. "I'm sorry," Mrs. Clark was saying, her voice thin with embarrassment. "I thought I had enough, but—" The total glowed on the register, $47.83. She was counting out crumpled bills with trembling fingers. Coming up short, I stepped forward. "Ring it up with mine." "Sylvester, I couldn't—" "Already done, Eleanor." I handed my card to the cashier, who looked relieved to finally move the line along. We walked out together, me carrying both sets of bags to her old Honda. Mrs. Clark was thanking me, apologizing, promising to pay me back. I told her not to worry about it. $47 wasn't going to break me. I was loading her groceries into her trunk when her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. The grip was surprisingly strong for someone with arthritis. I turned, startled. Mrs. Clark's eyes were locked on mine, and there was nothing confused or elderly about that gaze. It was sharp, focused, almost frightening in its clarity. "Sylvester," she whispered, leaning close enough that I could smell peppermint on her breath, "when your son-in-law leaves town, don't go into his garage." I blinked. "What?" "Matthew. When he runs. Don't go into the garage." Her fingers dug into my wrist. "You're in danger." For a moment, we just stood there in the parking lot, cars rolling past, shopping carts rattling. Mrs. Clark stared at me with those unnervingly clear eyes, and I felt something cold crawl down my spine. Then she released my wrist and smiled, a pleasant, grandmotherly smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for your help, dear. You're such a good neighbor." She got into her car and drove away, leaving me standing there with my hand still tingling where she'd grabbed it. I drove home on autopilot, her words echoing in my head. "When Matthew runs, don't go into the garage. You're in danger." It was nonsense. Had to be. Eleanor was in her 80s. Maybe she was getting confused. Maybe she'd mixed me up with someone else, some story from a television show. But that look in her eyes. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a minute, staring at my house. It was a good house, built in the 40s, solid construction. I'd lived here for 42 years, raised Kristen here, taught her to ride a bike on this driveway. The garage door was closed. Matthew's car was gone. He was working, supposedly, though his hours were irregular at best. Kristen's SUV sat in front, blocking the path to the detached garage out back. "Don't go into the garage." I shook my head and grabbed my groceries. Eleanor was a sweet woman, but she was old. That's all this was. Old age talking. I went inside and put away the groceries. The house was quiet. Kristen was somewhere upstairs. I heard water running, probably a bath. She took a lot of baths lately, spending hours up there while I rattled around downstairs alone. I made myself lunch, tried to watch television, but Mrs. Clark's words kept circling back. When he runs. When, not if. Like she knew something. Like she'd seen something. "Stop it," I told myself. "You're being paranoid." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That morning at the grocery store had cracked something open, and now I couldn't close it again. I tried to forget about Mrs. Clark's warning, told myself it was nothing. But once you start looking for something, you can't help but see it everywhere. The next morning at breakfast, I noticed Matthew hovering near the garage door, keys in hand, glancing back at the house like he was checking to see if I was watching. When he saw me at the window, he smiled and waved. Too casual. Too quick. That afternoon, I went to get a screwdriver from my workshop in the garage. The door was locked. My garage in my house, and the door was locked from the inside. I could hear movement in there, shuffling papers, a drawer closing. I knocked. "Just a minute, Dad," Matthew's voice, cheerful but strained. He opened the door a crack, body blocking the view inside. "Hey, need something?" "Screwdriver," Philip's head. "Oh, sure, let me grab that for you." He disappeared back inside, and I heard more shuffling, something heavy being moved. He returned with the screwdriver, handing it through the narrow opening. "There you go. What are you doing in there?" "Just organizing some old files. You know how it is. Paperwork piles up." That salesman's smile again. "Want to make your workshop more efficient for you?" My workshop, that I'd built with my own hands, that he was now organizing with the door locked. "Thanks," I said, taking the screwdriver. "Let me know when you're done. I need to get in there later." "Absolutely." The door closed. The lock clicked. I stood there, staring at it, Mrs. Clark's words playing on repeat. "Don't go into the garage." 3 days passed. Matthew spent more and more time in there, always locking the door. Kristen and Matthew would talk in low voices that stopped the instant I entered a room. I'd catch them exchanging looks across the dinner table, silent conversations I wasn't part of. I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring. The way Kristen watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way Matthew's eyes would linger on the antique pieces I'd restored, like he was taking inventory. The strange phone calls Matthew took outside, pacing the backyard while talking in hushed tones. 1 week after the grocery store incident, everything crystallized at breakfast. I was making scrambled eggs when Kristen came downstairs. Matthew followed a minute later. They sat at the table, and I could feel tension radiating off them like heat. "Dad," Kristen said, her voice carefully casual, "did you remember where you put your reading glasses yesterday?" I glanced up from the eggs. "On my nightstand, where they always are." "Really?" "Because I found them in the refrigerator this morning." I set down the spatula. "What?" "In the refrigerator," she repeated, concern dripping from every word. "With the milk. You must have put them there when you were getting breakfast and forgot." "I didn't put my glasses in the refrigerator, Kristen." "Well, they were there." She exchanged a look with Matthew. "You've been forgetting things lately, Dad. Little things. It's okay. It happens at your age." "At my age? I was 68, not 90. My mind was sharp as ever." "What things?" I asked carefully. Matthew jumped in, his voice full of manufactured sympathy. "Well, last week you forgot where you left your keys, remember? Spent 20 minutes looking for them." "I didn't forget. You borrowed them to move your car." "No, Dad, you misplaced them. We found them in the bathroom." He shook his head sadly. And there was that time you couldn't remember if you'd taken your vitamins. We had to. I remember everything perfectly, I said, my voice harder than I intended. I remember you took my keys because you'd blocked yourself in. I remember taking my vitamins every morning at 7:30. I remember every detail of every day. Silence fell over the kitchen. Kristen's face was a mask of concern, but her eyes were calculating. Matthew's smile had frozen in place. Of course you do, Dad, Kristen said softly. We're just worried about you. That's all. I served the eggs without another word. We ate in silence. After they left, Kristen for her errands, Matthew to work, I sat at the kitchen table and thought about my daughter. I remembered teaching her to use a hand plane when she was 12. She'd been so focused, tongue between her teeth in concentration, determined to get the motion right. When she'd finally produced a perfect curl of wood, she'd looked up at me with such pride. I remembered her at 16 coming to me crying because some boy had broken her heart. We'd sat in my workshop until midnight, and I'd taught her how to restore a water-damaged table while she talked. By dawn, both the table and her heart were on their way to recovery. I remembered her college graduation, how she'd introduced me to her friends as the best dad in the world, how she'd hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. When had that changed? When had my daughter started looking at me like I was an obstacle instead of her father? I knew the answer. Matthew. It had started the day she brought Matthew home. Not immediately. He was too smart for that. But gradually, like rot spreading through wood. Subtle at first. A comment here, a suggestion there. Distancing her from me, making her see me as a burden, as something in the way of their future. And now they were doing something in my garage. Something they didn't want me to see. Something that involved pretending I was losing my mind. When your son-in-law leaves town, don't go into his garage. You're in danger. I stood up from the table. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Whatever was happening, whatever they were planning, I wasn't going to be the confused old man they needed me to be. I walked to the window and looked out at the garage. The door was closed. Locked, no doubt. But locks could be dealt with. I'd installed that lock myself 20 years ago. I knew every board, every nail, every window in that building. Matthew and Kristen thought they were being clever. They thought they could gaslight me into doubting myself. They thought they could make me believe I was losing my memory, losing my mind. They were wrong. I didn't know what was in that garage yet, didn't know what they were planning. But I was going to find out, and when I did, they were going to learn something about underestimating people. I spent 40 years working with wood. I learned to spot rot before it showed on the surface. Learned to recognize weakness hiding under a pretty veneer. Learned patience. You can't rush good craftsmanship. You take your time, measure twice, cut once. I was going to take my time with this too. Watch, wait, gather information. And when the moment came, when Matthew ran like Mrs. Clark said he would, I'd be ready. They wanted me to be a confused old man? Fine. I'd give them exactly what they expected to see. I'd play along. Let them think their little game was working. And then I'd show them what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. The garage sat in my backyard, keeping its secrets. But not for long. Matthew would make a mistake. They always did. And when he did, I'd be watching. Bring it on, I thought. You want to play games with your father-in-law? Let's see how good you really are. A week passed, then another. I played my role perfectly. The forgetful old man, confused and declining. It wasn't hard. I just had to let them see what they want to see. At breakfast, I'd pause mid-sentence, pretending to lose my train of thought. Now what was I saying? I'd ask, watching Kristen's eyes light up with satisfaction. Matthew would pat my shoulder, all false sympathy. Don't worry about it, Dad. Happens to everyone. But while I played the fool, I was watching them. Really watching. And once you start seeing things clearly, you can't unsee them. Matthew had gotten sloppy with confidence. He'd take phone calls in the backyard, thinking I couldn't hear through the open kitchen window. I heard plenty. References to the old man and the timeline and June at the latest. He'd laugh, that salesman laugh, and say things like, "Trust me, it's all under control. He doesn't suspect a thing." I suspected everything. Kristen had developed a tell. Whenever she lied to my face, she'd touch her left earring. A quick brush with her fingertips, barely noticeable. But I noticed. When she told me I'd forgotten to take my medication, touch. When she said I'd promised to sign some papers but couldn't remember, touch. When she suggested maybe I should see a doctor about my memory issues, touch, touch, touch. I started keeping a notebook, small, pocket-sized, easy to hide. Every lie, every manipulation, every whispered conversation that stopped when I entered a room. I documented it all in precise detail. Dates, times, exact words when I could catch them. The notebook lived in my greenhouse, tucked behind a pot of orchids. They'd never look there. Kristen hated the greenhouse, said it was too humid, too much work. Matthew had never set foot in it. Perfect hiding place. One afternoon, I was in there watering my plants when I heard them in the backyard. They didn't know I was there. My truck was in the shop, so they assumed I'd gone somewhere with the loaner car. But I'd walked home, wanted the exercise. "He's getting worse," Kristen was saying. Her voice carried through the greenhouse glass. "Yesterday, he asked me 3 times what day it was." Lie. I'd asked once, casually, because I was testing her. She'd given me the wrong day. I'd corrected her, and she'd looked annoyed. "Perfect," Matthew replied. "Keep documenting everything, every little slip, every confused moment. We need a solid pattern for the petition." Petition. There was that word again. "I talked to Richard again," Matthew continued. "He says with the evidence we're building, plus the medical evaluation from Richardson, we should have guardianship by early summer. Then we can move fast, sell the house before he can contest anything." "What about his lawyer? Doesn't he have one?" "Some old guy who handled the business sale years ago. Doubt he even remembers he exists. And even if he does, by the time anyone files paperwork, we'll be done. House sold, money transferred, old man in a care facility. Can't fight what's already happened." My hands had stopped moving. I stood there, spray bottle in hand, water dripping onto the concrete floor. They were going to declare me incompetent, take guardianship, sell my house out from under me, put me in some facility, and disappear with the money. My daughter and her husband were going to rob me blind and throw me away like garbage. The rage came first, hot and bright. Then it cooled, hardened into something else, something calculating. I finished watering my orchids with steady hands, put away the spray bottle, made notes in my little book. Then I walked back into the house through the side door they hadn't seen me use. "Oh, Dad!" Kristen jumped when I appeared in the kitchen. "I didn't hear you come in." "Just got back from my walk," I said, playing confused. "Did I miss lunch? What time is it?" That earring touch. "It's 3 o'clock, Dad. You had lunch at noon, remember?" "Did I?" I shook my head, shambled toward the refrigerator. Getting forgetful in my old age, I guess. Behind me, I heard her exhale with satisfaction. Heard Matthew's quiet, perfect, under his breath. They thought they were so clever. Later that evening, I went through my safe. They'd already stolen the original deed and my old will. I'd noticed that days ago. But what they didn't know was that I'd made copies. Years ago, after a friend lost everything in a house fire, I'd gotten in the habit of keeping duplicates of important documents. Copies of the deed, copies of financial statements, copies of everything, stored in a safe deposit box at the bank downtown. They'd stolen papers. They'd stolen worthless copies. I sat in my study that night, thinking. Matthew had mentioned a doctor, Richardson, a medical evaluation, forged documents, most likely, and someone named Richard, probably a lawyer, or someone pretending to be one. I needed to know more, needed to understand the full scope of what they were planning. But most importantly, I needed evidence. Real evidence, not just my notebook of observations. The next morning, I opened a new checking account at a different bank. Transferred some money there, nothing suspicious, just enough to work with. Then I went to Radio Shack and bought a small digital voice recorder. $89. The kid at the counter showed me how to use it, how to hide it in plain sight. I put it in the living room that evening, tucked behind a picture frame on the bookshelf, right where Kristen and Matthew liked to sit and talk when they thought I was asleep. The first few nights gave me nothing useful. General conversation, television noise, the sounds of them moving through the house. Then a week later, I hit gold. It was past 11. I'd gone to bed at my usual time, made a show of taking my pills and shuffling upstairs like an old man who could barely climb the steps. But I wasn't sleeping. I was lying in the dark, waiting. Around midnight, I heard them settle into the living room, voices low but clear enough for the recorder. 2 more months, Kristen said. Richard says we can file the petition by early May. With Dad's age and the symptoms we've documented, plus Richardson's evaluation, the court should approve guardianship within a week or 2. And the house? Matthew's voice. Already have a buyer lined up. Friend of Richard's. Cash sale. Close in 30 days. We'll clear $800,000 after fees. What about your dad? Shady Grove Senior Center. $800 a month. Medicaid will cover most of it after we spend down his assets. He'll be fine there. The casual cruelty in her voice would have broken my heart if I'd had any heart left to break. And the documents in the garage? All set. Forged medical records showing cognitive decline over the past year. Fake will leaving everything to us. Power of attorney forms pre-signed. Richardson's evaluation is the final piece. Once we have that, we file. What if he fights it? Kristen laughed. With what? We have doctor's reports. Documented behavior. Witnesses who'll testify he's been declining for months. Who's going to believe a confused old man over medical professionals? They talked for another 20 minutes. I listened to every word through my bedroom floor, knowing the recorder was catching all of it. They were planning to steal my life, my home, my money, my dignity. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. The next morning, I sat in my greenhouse and thought about my next move. The recorder had given me ammunition, but I needed more. I needed professional help. Not friends. I'd learned that people who know you too well make assumptions about what you can and can't handle. No, I needed professionals who'd take me seriously. I drove downtown to a law office I'd seen advertised. Gerald Martinez, specializing in estate planning and elder law. Not the lawyer who'd handled my business sale. Not anyone who might know me or have preconceptions. Someone new. Someone who'd look at the facts without bias. His receptionist tried to squeeze me in for the following week, but I mentioned the word fraud, and her demeanor changed. 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from Gerald Martinez himself. He was maybe 50, sharp-eyed, with the kind of face that had seen plenty of people trying to pull scams. Good. I needed someone who wouldn't be shocked by what I had to tell him. I laid it all out. The stolen documents, the gaslighting attempts, the conversations I'd recorded. I played him the recording from the night before, watched his expression harden as he listened to my daughter casually discussing how to rob me and warehouse me in the cheapest facility she could find. When the recording ended, Martinez sat back in his chair. Mr. Woods, what you've described is attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit guardianship abuse, and potentially several other charges. This is serious. I know. What can I do about it? He pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. First, we need to protect your assets immediately. Create a revocable living trust. Transfer everything into it. They can't steal what they can't access. Second, we need documentation of your mental competency. I'll arrange for evaluations by 2 independent physicians, neurologist and psychiatrist. Third, we need more evidence. That recording is good, but we need to know exactly what's in that garage they keep mentioning. How do I get into the garage? It's locked. It's your property, Mr. Woods. You have every legal right to enter it. The question is timing. He tapped his pen on the desk. Your daughter mentioned a doctor, Richardson. We need to know if that's a real doctor or a fraud. And this Richard person she keeps referencing, I'll hire a private investigator to identify him and document any meetings. How much is this going to cost? My retainer is $5,000. The investigator will be another $2,500 plus expenses. The medical evaluation's probably $1,200 total. Call it $9,000 to start. I didn't hesitate. Done. Martinez smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. Mr. Woods, I have to say, you're handling this remarkably well. Most people in your situation would be falling apart. I've had time to get angry, I said. Now I'm just interested in justice. Over the next 2 weeks, things started moving. Martinez arranged the medical evaluations. Both doctors confirmed I was mentally sharp, no signs of cognitive decline, fully competent. Those reports went into a file that was growing thicker by the day. The private investigator, a woman named Carla Henderson, was worth every penny. She was maybe mid-40s, dressed like she could blend into any crowd, and had the kind of attention to detail I appreciated. Reminded me of measuring wood. Precise, methodical, no room for error. She followed Matthew for a week and came back with a report that made my teeth clench. "Your son-in-law has some expensive habits," she said, spreading photos across Martinez's conference table. "Underground poker games, high stakes. He's into a loan shark for just over $184,000. That's why he needs your money so badly. He's not just greedy, he's desperate." More photos. Matthew meeting with a man outside a strip mall office. "That's Richard Castellano, disbarred attorney, now running document fraud schemes. $5,000 gets you a complete fake identity packet, medical records, legal documents, whatever you need. Your son-in-law paid him that amount 3 weeks ago. And the doctor? Richardson? Stephen Walters goes by several names. Former paramedic, lost his license in 2019 for falsifying medical records. Now he sells fake medical evaluations to people trying to scam guardianship cases or disability claims. Matthew paid him $3,500 for a full psychological evaluation, declaring you mentally incompetent." I stared at the photos. My daughter and her husband had paid nearly $9,000 to fraud experts, all to steal everything I owned. Martinez looked at me across the table. "Mr. Woods, we have enough here to go to the police right now. Fraud, conspiracy, document forgery, they'd both be arrested." "Not yet," I said. My voice was calm, but inside I was planning. "I want to see what's in that garage first. I want to know the full extent of what they're planning. And I want them to think they've won, right up until the moment we take them down." Carla grinned. "I like the way you think." "There's something else," Martinez said. "Your daughter mentioned filing the petition in early May. That's roughly 6 weeks from now. We need to move before then. Once they file, even with all our evidence, it creates complications. Better to stop them before they get that far." "Matthew mentioned leaving town," I said, remembering Mrs. Clark's warning. "Said something about a business conference. When that happens, I'm going into the garage. I'll photograph everything. Bring you copies." "Be careful," Martinez warned. "If they catch you, they won't." I thought about all those years in the workshop, moving quietly, paying attention to details. I know that garage better than they do. It's my space, my tools, my territory. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my role even better. More confused moments, more forgotten conversations. I let them see exactly what they wanted to see. A declining old man losing his grip on reality. But every night I reviewed my notes. Every morning I added to the file Martinez was building. Every afternoon I checked in with Carla, who was documenting every move Matthew made, every meeting with Castellano, every detail we'd need in court. They thought they were running a con, but I was running a counter-operation and I had professionals backing me up. Real lawyers, real investigators, real evidence. The recorder kept capturing conversations. I had hours of them now, stored safely in my bank deposit box. Kristen and Matthew discussing their plans in casual, cruel detail. How they'd sell my restored furniture pieces for quick cash. How they'd clear out the greenhouse. Who needs a bunch of flowers anyway? How they'd take the money and disappear to somewhere warm, maybe Arizona. Start fresh. Start fresh with my life's work. My home. Everything I'd built. One evening in late March, Matthew announced at dinner that he had to go to Seattle for a business conference. Week-long trip. Important clients. I played confused. "Seattle? That's nice, dear. When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning, Dad." He shot a glance at Kristen. "You'll be okay here with just Kristen, right?" "Oh, sure. I'll be fine." I fumbled with my fork, let it clatter on the plate. "Seattle. That's in Washington, right?" "Right, Dad." His smile was pure condescension. But I knew the truth. Carla had already checked. There was no conference. Matthew was going to Reno, Nevada. Going to gamble, probably trying to win back some of what he owed. Making things worse. After dinner, I called Martinez from my cell phone, standing in the greenhouse where no one could hear. "He's leaving tomorrow. I'm going into the garage as soon as he's gone." "Good. Document everything, photos, videos if you can. Don't touch anything. We need to show it exactly as they left it." "And Mr. Woods?" "Yes?" "Whatever you find in there, stay calm. We need you focused, not emotional. Can you do that?" I looked at my orchids. their delicate blooms perfect and precise, everything in its place, everything carefully tended. "I can do that," I said, and I understood then exactly how this would end. Not with anger, not with violence, with the law, with evidence, with the slow, inexorable grinding of justice. They'd built a trap for me, but I was going to spring it on them instead. Tomorrow I'd see what was in the garage, and then the real game would begin. Matthew left early the next morning. I watched from my bedroom window as he loaded his suitcase into the trunk, whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. Kristen stood on the porch in her bathrobe, coffee cup in hand. They kissed goodbye. She waved as he drove away, playing house, playing family, playing me. I waited an hour. Kristen went upstairs for a shower. I heard the water running. That gave me at least 20 minutes. The garage key was in my workshop drawer, right where I'd left it decades ago when I'd installed the lock. Matthew had probably never even thought to check if I had a copy. Why would he? In his mind, I was just a confused old man who barely remembered where he'd put his glasses. The key turned smoothly. The door opened with a familiar creak. I stepped inside and closed it behind me. My workshop. The space I'd built with my own hands, where I'd created furniture, restored antiques, taught my daughter the difference between oak and maple. Now it had been transformed into a war room against me. My hands were surprisingly steady as I pulled out my phone and started photographing. The workbench was covered in documents. I took pictures of everything, making sure each one was clear and legible. Medical records with Dr. Samuel Richardson letterhead, dated over the past 6 months, documenting my alleged cognitive decline. The handwriting looked professional, but I'd never met any Dr. Richardson. Never had any appointments. These were complete fabrications. A fake will, supposedly written by me, leaving everything to Kristen. The signature wasn't even close to mine. Whoever had forged it had clearly never seen my actual handwriting. I almost laughed. Almost. Court petition for emergency guardianship, half filled out, ready to file. The reasoning section cited severe cognitive impairment, inability to care for himself, danger to himself and others. Every word a lie. A manila folder labeled House Sale, June 2025. Inside, preliminary paperwork with a real estate contact. They'd already started the process, already had someone lined up to buy my home out from under me. I found the inventory list next. My Victorian secretary desk. Estimated value $15,000. My restored dining set, $12,000. The antique sideboard I'd spent 3 months bringing back to life, $8,000. Line after line, pricing out my life's work, like items at a yard sale. Total estimated value, $67,000. My jaw clenched, but I kept photographing. Martinez had said to document everything, so I documented. On the wall, someone, probably Matthew, had taped up printouts. Assisted living facilities. I moved closer, taking pictures of each one. Shady Grove Senior Center, $800 per month. Medicaid accepted after assets spend down. Another one. Riverside Care Home, $950 per month. Memory care available, the cheapest places they could find. Warehouses for elderly people nobody wanted anymore. That's where they planned to put me while they lived in Arizona on my money. I took over 40 photos, every document, every scrap of evidence. Then I started recording video, slowly panning across the workspace, narrating what I was seeing. This is the forged medical evaluation. This is the fake will. This is their plan to steal my house. My voice stayed level, professional, like I was documenting someone else's tragedy. When I was finished, I backed out of the garage carefully, making sure everything was exactly as I'd found it. Locked the door. Walked back to the house as if nothing had happened. Kristen was in the kitchen when I came in, dressed now, making toast. "Morning, Dad. Sleep okay?" "Fine, dear. Just fine." I shuffled to the refrigerator, playing my part. "Have you seen my... what's it called? The thing for the bread? Butter?" She pointed to the counter, that familiar touch of her earring. "Right there, Dad." "Oh, right. Thank you." I made my breakfast slowly, deliberately clumsy, while she watched with barely concealed satisfaction. Every confused moment I gave her was fuel for their case, or so she thought. But this time, the joke was on them. That afternoon, I drove to Martinez's office. Carla was already there, spread out at the conference table with her own stack of photos. Matthew in Reno, Matthew at the casino, Matthew meeting with the document forger. I uploaded my photos to Martinez's computer. We went through them one by one. "This is gold," Martinez said, his eyes sharp behind his reading glasses. "Forged medical documents, fraudulent wills, conspiracy to commit guardianship fraud. Mr. Woods, they've given us everything we need to bury them." "What's next?" I asked. "Next, we protect you. I've already prepared a new living trust. All your assets will be transferred into it by the end of the week. Your house, your bank accounts, your share of the woodworking business. Once it's in the trust, they can't touch it, even if they somehow got guardianship, which they won't." Carla spread out more photos. "Your house is currently valued at approximately $847,000. You have $340,000 in various bank accounts. Your business share is worth about $125,000. Total assets, $1.3 million, give or take." I'd never thought of it that way, never added it all up. I'd just lived my life, worked hard, saved money, made smart decisions. But to Matthew and Kristen, I wasn't a person. I was $1.3 million standing in their way. "The medical evaluations are scheduled for tomorrow," Martinez continued. "Two independent doctors, a neurologist and a psychiatrist. They'll conduct thorough examinations and document that you're completely competent. Those reports, combined with your photos and our recordings, will prove their fraud conclusively." "When do we go to the police?" "Soon. But first, we wait for them to make their move. Right now, they haven't actually filed anything. Everything in that garage is preparation, planning. The crime isn't complete until they try to execute it." He leaned forward. "Mr. Woods, I know this is difficult, but if we wait until they file that guardianship petition, we catch them in the act. The charges will be more serious, and the evidence will be irrefutable." "So I just keep playing the fool for a few more weeks. Can you do that?" I thought about my daughter, the girl who used to call me her hero. Then I thought about the woman who wanted to lock me away in an $800 a month facility while she spent my money in Arizona. "I can do that," I said. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued my performance. I got lost on the way to the grocery store, took a wrong turn, came home 2 hours later. Kristen made a note on her phone. I forgot the names of neighbors I'd known for decades. More notes. I left the stove on once, deliberately, carefully, just long enough for Kristen to notice and turn it off with a dramatic sigh. Every incident, she documented. Every moment of decline, she recorded, building her case. But I was building mine, too. The medical evaluations came back perfect. Dr. Patricia Chen, neurologist. Patient demonstrates excellent cognitive function. No signs of dementia or impairment. Dr. Robert Yamamoto, psychiatrist. Patient is alert, oriented with intact memory and judgment, fully competent. Martinez filed both reports with the court, quietly, without notifying anyone. Insurance, protection, proof. The living trust was finalized. Every asset transferred, locked away where they couldn't reach it. My lawyer, my investigator, my doctors, all lined up like pieces on a chessboard. And I waited. The morning Matthew came home from his business trip, I was in the greenhouse watering my orchids. Through the glass, I watched his car pull into the driveway. He looked tired, stressed, the kind of look a man gets when he's lost $23,000 gambling and has loan sharks breathing down his neck. Carla had tracked every dollar, every casino visit, every desperate bet. Matthew was in deeper than ever, which meant their timeline was accelerating. I gave them a few days to regroup. Then one morning at breakfast, everything changed. Kristen set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. The gesture reminded me of someone preparing to deliver bad news, or what they thought was good news. "Dad, Matthew and I have been talking. We're worried about you." "Worried?" I blinked at her, fork halfway to my mouth. "Your memory issues are getting worse. The stove incident, getting lost, forgetting names." She reached across the table, took my hand. Her fingers were cold. "We think you need help. Professional help." Matthew nodded, his salesman face in place. "We've made an appointment for you, Dad. Dr. Richardson. He's excellent, specializes in senior care. He's going to do a complete evaluation." "An evaluation?" I let my voice quaver slightly. Perfect, confused old man. What kind of evaluation? Just routine, Dad. Making sure you're okay. Nothing to worry about. Kristen squeezed my hand. The appointment is next Tuesday. We'll take you. Tuesday. 5 days away. And then they'd have their fake diagnosis, file their petition, start the process of stealing everything. I looked at Kristen's face, searching for any hint of the daughter I'd raised, but there was nothing there except calculation and greed. Matthew sat beside her, already counting his money. Okay, I said softly, if you think it's best. They exchanged a triumphant glance. I finished my breakfast in silence, playing the obedient, declining old man. Then I went to my greenhouse and called Martinez. They're moving. Appointment Tuesday with the fake doctor. Perfect. That gives us time. Are you ready to do this? I looked at my orchids, their delicate petals hiding the strength underneath. Orchids were survivors. They looked fragile, but could outlast almost anything. I'm ready. That weekend, Martinez filed papers with the court. Not guardianship petitions, protection orders, restraining documentation, legal groundwork that would become relevant very soon. Monday night, I barely slept. Not from nervousness, but from anticipation. Everything was in place. Every piece ready to move. Tuesday morning came. Kristen made breakfast, cheerful and solicitous. Matthew was already dressed in his best suit. Wanted to look respectable for the doctor, I supposed. Ready for your appointment, Dad? Kristen asked, that fake brightness in her voice. Actually, I said, setting down my coffee cup, I don't think I'll be going. The kitchen went still. What? Kristen's smile froze. Dr. Richardson, I won't be seeing him. I kept my voice mild, conversational. Interesting name, by the way. I did some research. There's no Dr. Richardson licensed to practice psychology in Oregon. There is, however, a Stephen Walters, former paramedic, lost his license in 2019 for falsifying medical records. He's been using various fake names to sell fraudulent evaluations. Matthew's face went pale, like milk left in the sun. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. What are you talking about? Kristen's voice had an edge now, that earring touch happening twice in quick succession. Dad, you're confused. No, Kristen, I'm not confused. I reached beside my chair and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Thick, heavy, full of evidence. I set it on the table between us with a solid thunk. But you two are in serious trouble. I opened the folder. On top were printouts of the photos from the garage, the forged medical records, the fake will, the guardianship petition, the house sale paperwork. Kristen's face drained of color. All that careful makeup couldn't hide the pallor that spread across her skin. Her hand trembled as she reached for the folder, then stopped midway, like she was afraid to touch it. Matthew finally found his voice. How did you... He stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. You went into the garage. You had no right. It's my garage, Matthew. My house. My property. I pulled out another sheet. But let's talk about rights. Here's a recording transcript. Would you like me to read it? We'll have guardianship by early summer. Then we can sell the house, spend down his assets, stick him in Shady Grove for $800 a month. Ring any bells? Matthew lunged for the folder. I pulled it back calmly. Copies, Matthew, just like everything else. The originals are with my attorney and the police. That stopped him cold. The word police hit like a physical blow. His face went from pale to gray, and I watched his Adam's apple bob as he tried to swallow. Kristen found her voice. This is insane. You're making things up. You're paranoid. She stood up, and her chair tipped backward, clattering to the floor. This is our house. We've been taking care of you. You're sick. You need help. I've been evaluated by 2 independent physicians, Dr. Patricia Chen and Dr. Robert Yamamoto. Both found me completely competent. Their reports are filed with the court. I pulled out another document. I also created a new living trust. Every asset I own, the house worth $847,000. My bank accounts totaling $340,000. My business share worth $125,000. All safely protected. You can't touch any of it. The numbers hung in the air. Kristen's eyes went wide. She'd known about the house, but the full total clearly shocked her. Over $1 million, slipping through her fingers like sand. You can't do this, Matthew said, but his voice was weak now. The salesman's confidence had evaporated, leaving behind something small and desperate. We're family. We're family. I stood up slowly, looking at both of them. Family doesn't forge medical records. Family doesn't plot to have their father declared incompetent. Family doesn't plan to warehouse him in the cheapest facility they can find while they steal his life savings. Kristen's face crumpled. For a second, I thought I saw real emotion there. Shame, maybe, or remorse. But then her expression hardened into rage. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "We'll fight this. We'll get our own lawyers. You'll lose." I said it quietly, without heat. Just fact. "I have recordings of your conversations, photos of all your forged documents, a private investigator's report showing Matthew meeting with Richard Castellano, a document forger, and paying him $5,000. Bank records showing payment to Stephen Walters for a fake medical evaluation. You've committed multiple felonies, both of you." Matthew's legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard, his face in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. Whether from fear or rage, I couldn't tell. Didn't care. "Get out of my house," I said. "You have until the end of the day to pack your things and leave. My attorney has filed restraining orders. If you come within 500 feet of this property, after today, you'll be arrested." "This is our home." Kristen's voice broke on the last word. "No," I said. "It's my home. It was always my home. You were guests who abused my hospitality and tried to rob me blind. Now you're trespassers." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them there with their shattered plans spread across the table. Behind me, I heard Kristen start to cry, harsh, angry sobs. Heard Matthew cursing under his breath. I went to my greenhouse and sat among my orchids. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. They didn't leave quietly. For the rest of that day, I stayed in my greenhouse while they packed. Watched through the glass as they made trip after trip to Matthew's car, loading boxes and bags. Kristen's face was blotchy from crying. Matthew moved like a man in a daze, mechanical and defeated. Around sunset, Martinez called. "The restraining orders are active. 500 feet minimum distance. If they violate it, they'll be arrested immediately." "Good. There's something else you should know. I filed a police report this afternoon. Detective Sarah Wu from the Financial Crimes Division will be in touch. They're treating this as attempted elder fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft. These are serious charges, Mr. Woods." "How serious?" "Matthew could face 5 to 10 years if convicted. Kristen, as an accessory, maybe 2 to 5. But that depends on a lot of factors. Their criminal history, whether they cooperate, what a jury thinks." I watched Kristen carry out a box of her clothes. My daughter, who'd once brought me Father's Day cards covered in glitter and called me her hero. "Mr. Woods, you still there?" "I'm here. What happens next?" "The police will investigate. They'll interview you, examine the evidence, probably execute a search warrant on the garage to seize the forged documents. Then it goes to the district attorney's office. They decide whether to press charges. With the evidence we have, I'd say it's almost certain." That evening, after they'd finally driven away, I walked through my house. It felt different. Lighter somehow, despite everything. In the kitchen, I found the folder still on the table where I'd left it. Picked it up, looked at the photos one more time. Then I went to see Mrs. Clark. She answered her door in her bathrobe, eyes widening when she saw me. "Sylvester, are you all right?" I saw them leaving with all those boxes. "I'm fine, Eleanor. Better than fine, actually." I smiled. "I came to thank you. That warning you gave me at the grocery store, it saved everything." "How did you know?" She gestured me inside. Her living room was warm, cluttered with books and knitting projects. We sat in worn armchairs that had probably been there for decades. "I heard them," she said simply. "That day in early February, I was in my garden. You know how close our properties are. Matthew was in your garage with the window open, talking on his phone. He was loud, agitated. I heard him say the old man and incompetent and guardianship. I'm 82, Sylvester, but my hearing is still sharp, and I was a notary for 35 years. I know the signs of elder abuse." "Why didn't you tell me directly? Why the cryptic warning?" She folded her hands in her lap. "Because I wasn't completely sure. I'd only heard part of a conversation. What if I was wrong? What if I caused trouble in your family for nothing? But I couldn't stay silent either, so I gave you a warning, vague enough that if I was mistaken, no harm done, but specific enough that if something was wrong, you'd be alert. It was perfect, I said. You gave me exactly what I needed. What will happen to them? Police investigation, criminal charges most likely, prison time for Matthew, probation for Kristen if she's lucky. Mrs. Clark nodded slowly. I know she's your daughter. This can't be easy. She stopped being my daughter when she decided I was worth more dead than alive. I stood up. I need to ask you something, Eleanor. When this goes to trial, would you be willing to testify about what you heard? Of course, absolutely. Thank you for everything. The next morning, Detective Wu arrived. She was maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that reminded me of Carla. We sat at my kitchen table, and I walked her through everything, showed her the recordings, the photos, Martinez's documentation. She took notes on a laptop, asking precise questions. When did you first suspect something was wrong? How did you gain access to the garage? Did you touch anything when you photographed the documents? After 2 hours, she closed her laptop. Mr. Woods, I've been investigating financial crimes for 15 years. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of attempted elder fraud I've seen. Your documentation is excellent. The evidence is solid. We'll execute a search warrant on the garage tomorrow, seize everything. I expect we'll have charges filed within 2 weeks. That fast? With this much evidence? The DA will fast-track it. Elder abuse cases are taken very seriously in Oregon. She stood, handed me her card. If they contact you, and they will, don't respond. Don't answer calls. Don't reply to texts or emails. Everything goes through your attorney. Understand? I understand. She was right about the contact. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing. Text from Kristen. Dad, please, we can work this out. Don't do this to us. I deleted it. Another text. This is all a misunderstanding. We were trying to help you. Deleted. A voicemail from Matthew. Dad, listen, we can explain everything. Those documents, they're not what you think. Just talk to us, please. I forwarded it to Martinez and deleted it. By evening, they'd tried calling 12 times. I blocked both numbers. 2 days later, Martinez called with news. The search warrant was executed this morning. Police seized everything from the garage. The forged medical records, the fake will, the guardianship petition, all of it. They also found something interesting. What? A second laptop hidden under the workbench. Belongs to Matthew. Carla's going through it with the police tech team. Apparently he kept detailed notes on the scheme. Names, amounts, timelines, even email exchanges with Richard Castellano, the document forger. It's like he kept a diary of his crimes. I almost laughed. He always was meticulous about documentation. Guess he never thought anyone would find it. His meticulousness is going to put him in prison. Oh, and the DA's office called. They're filing charges next week. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, conspiracy, attempted theft. Kristen's being charged as an accessory. How long until trial? Could be 6 months, could be a year. Depends on the court schedule, whether they take a plea deal. But Mr. Woods, you've won. This is over. Except it wasn't. Not quite. 5 days after the charges were filed, Kristen and Matthew hired a lawyer. Some hotshot from a big firm in downtown Portland, the kind who wore $1,000 suits and charged by the minute. Martinez called to tell me. Alan Rothberg, he's good, expensive, aggressive. Where are they getting the money to pay him? Rothberg sometimes takes high-profile cases on contingency if he thinks he can win. Or maybe they borrowed it. Either way, we need to be prepared. They're going to fight. I wasn't worried, but I should have been. The counterattack came in the form of a petition filed with the court. I was reading it in Martinez's office, trying to understand the legal language. They're claiming you set them up, Martinez explained, alleging that you planted the documents in the garage yourself, that you're mentally unstable, paranoid, and manufactured evidence against your own family because you're suffering from early dementia and became convinced they were trying to harm you. That's insane. It's desperate, and it's actually a clever defense. If they can raise reasonable doubt about your mental state, they can argue the evidence is tainted, that you might have forged documents yourself and blamed them. My stomach tightened. Can they do that? With my medical evaluations? They're challenging those too. claiming you coached yourself for the evaluations, that you were lucid during the testing, but deteriorate when stressed. They're requesting their own psychiatric evaluation to be performed by their expert. Another fake doctor? No, this one's real. Dr. Marcus Brennan, actually quite respected. But he's also known for testifying for the defense in cases like this. He'll be looking for any sign of cognitive decline, paranoia, false memory syndrome. For the first time since this started, I felt a flicker of doubt. What if their lawyer was good enough to make people believe I was the problem? Martinez must have seen something in my face. Mr. Woods, don't panic. We have the recordings. We have metadata showing they were created before you discovered them. We have Carla's reports documenting Matthew's meetings with forgers before you entered the garage. We have the timeline. You couldn't have set this up. It's all documented. What do I need to do? Submit to their psychiatric evaluation. It's the only way to prove you have nothing to hide. Dr. Brennan will test you extensively. Just be yourself. Tell the truth. Your actual mental state will shine through. The evaluation was scheduled for the following week. 3 hours of cognitive testing, memory exercises, psychological questionnaires. Dr. Brennan was a severe man in his 60s, with cold eyes that examined me like I was a specimen under glass. He asked impossible questions. Mr. Woods, isn't it true you've been isolated since retirement? That your daughter and son-in-law were your primary social contacts? Could you have misinterpreted their concern for you as something sinister? No, I recorded their conversations. They explicitly discussed forging documents. But you were recording them secretly. Why would someone do that unless they were already paranoid? I was gathering evidence after my neighbor warned me. Your 82-year-old neighbor, who according to my information has been treated for anxiety and takes medication for it. Could she have been confused? Could you have built an entire conspiracy theory based on an old woman's confused ramblings? It went on like that, twisting everything, looking for cracks, trying to make me doubt my own memory. By the end, I was exhausted. But I'd told the truth. Every question, every test. I had nothing to hide. 2 weeks later, Dr. Brennan's report came back. Martinez called me to his office to discuss it. Good news and bad news. Good news. He found no evidence of dementia or significant cognitive decline. You scored well on all memory and reasoning tests. Bad news. He's suggesting something called late-onset paranoid disorder. Claims you might be experiencing delusional thinking about persecution while otherwise appearing lucid. That's ridiculous. Yes, but it's just plausible enough to be dangerous in court. He's giving their defense attorney ammunition. Martinez tapped his pen on the desk. However, we have a countermove. I've scheduled you for a third evaluation with Dr. Helen Kowalski. She's one of the top forensic psychiatrists in the state. If she clears you, and I believe she will, we'll have 3 evaluations. 2 saying you're completely fine, 1 suggesting possible paranoia. The jury will see the pattern. Dr. Kowalski was different from Brennan. She was younger, warmer, and she asked different questions. Mr. Woods, tell me about your woodworking. We talked about furniture restoration for an hour, about grain patterns and joinery, about the satisfaction of bringing old pieces back to life, about my orchids, my greenhouse, my routines. Then she asked, when you discovered what your daughter was planning, how did you feel? Betrayed, angry, sad. Did you want revenge? I wanted justice. There's a difference. What's the difference? Revenge is emotional, destructive. Justice is about making things right according to the law. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted to stop them from hurting me, and I wanted them held accountable for what they'd done. She made notes. And if you could go back, would you do anything differently? I thought about it. I wish I'd seen the warning signs earlier. I wish I'd protected myself sooner. But no, I wouldn't change how I handled it. I did what I had to do. Her report, when it came, was definitive. Patient shows no signs of paranoid disorder, delusional thinking, or cognitive impairment. His response to actual threats against him was rational, measured, and appropriate. His documentation and planning demonstrate clear thinking and good judgment. The suggestion of paranoid disorder is not supported by evidence. Martinez was triumphant. This is perfect. Brennan's report is now the outlier. 2 independent evaluations saying you're fine, 1 paid defense expert trying to find problems. The DA is thrilled. This actually strengthens the case against them. But Kristen and Matthew weren't done fighting. A week before the preliminary hearing, I received a letter, not from them, that would violate the restraining order, but from their attorney. It was an offer. They'd plead to reduce charges, serve minimal jail time, in exchange for me providing a victim impact statement, asking for leniency. They'd give up all claims to my property. They'd disappear from my life, forever. It's a plea bargain, Martinez explained. They're trying to avoid a trial, probably because they know they'll lose. What happens if I refuse? Full criminal trial. Could take a year. They'll drag you through testimony, cross-examination. It'll be public, exhausting. But they'll almost certainly be convicted of serious felonies. Matthew looking at significant prison time. I thought about Kristen, about the little girl who used to help me in the workshop, about the woman who'd planned to lock me away in the cheapest nursing home she could find. No deal, I said. Let them face trial. Let a jury decide. Martinez nodded slowly. I thought you'd say that. I'll inform their attorney. That evening, sitting in my greenhouse with my orchids, I felt the weight of what was coming. A trial. Months of legal battles. My daughter, my only child, facing prison. But some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. They'd made their choices. Now they'd live with the consequences. And so would I. The preliminary hearing arrived faster than I expected. A gray morning in early May, the kind where Portland rain comes down in sheets and everything feels cold and heavy. Martinez met me at the courthouse steps. Ready? I adjusted my tie, the same one I'd worn to sell my business 5 years ago. Ready? Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood paneling, rows of benches, an American flag in the corner. Kristen and Matthew sat at the defense table with their lawyer, Rothberg. They looked diminished somehow. Matthew's expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion on his face. Kristen kept her eyes down, refusing to look at me. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Patricia Hoffman. She reviewed the case file with sharp, efficient movements, then looked up at both legal teams. This is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Mr. Rothberg, I understand you've filed motions to dismiss based on your client's claim that Mr. Woods fabricated evidence? Rothberg stood. That's correct, Your Honor. We believe. I've read your filing. I've also read the prosecution's response, including metadata analysis of the recordings, witness testimony, and bank records. Let's proceed. The prosecution went first. Detective Wu testified about the search warrant, the documents seized from the garage, Matthew's laptop with his detailed notes about the scheme. She was precise, unshakable. Then came Carla. She presented photos of Matthew meeting with Richard Castellano, the document forger. Time-stamped, location tagged, undeniable. Bank records showing Matthew's $5,000 payment. And when was this meeting? The prosecutor asked. March 18th, 3 days before Mr. Woods claims to have discovered the documents in the garage. Rothberg tried to challenge her testimony during cross-examination. Isn't it possible Mr. Woods hired Mr. Castellano himself to create these documents? To frame my clients? Carla didn't blink. The bank records show payment from Matthew Palmer's personal account. Mr. Woods had no contact with Mr. Castellano. We have phone records, security footage, everything. Next came Mrs. Clark. She walked slowly to the witness stand, but once she started talking, her voice was strong and clear. I heard Matthew Palmer on February 2nd talking on the phone in the garage. He said the words incompetent, guardianship, and sell the house. That's why I warned Sylvester. I've been a notary for 35 years. I know elder fraud when I hear it. Rothberg tried to shake her. Mrs. Clark, you're 82 years old. You take medication for anxiety. Isn't it possible you misheard? Misunderstood? Young man, she said, and I saw a flash of the sharp woman who'd warned me in that parking lot. My hearing is excellent. My memory is excellent, and I know what I heard. Those two planned to rob Sylvester Woods and throw him away like garbage. The judge actually smiled slightly at that. Then came the medical experts. Dr. Chen and Dr. Yamamoto, both testifying that I was completely competent. Then Dr. Kowalski, dismantling Dr. Brennan's paranoid disorder suggestion piece by piece. Mr. Woods's response to actual threats was appropriate and measured. There's no evidence of delusional thinking. He documented real crimes being planned against him. By lunch, Rothberg looked like a man drowning. His defense was falling apart in real time. The evidence was overwhelming, the testimony devastating. But the afternoon brought the real hammer blow. The prosecution called Stephen Walters, the fake Dr. Richardson, as a witness. He shuffled to the stand in an orange jumpsuit, looking small and scared. He'd been arrested on unrelated fraud charges and was cooperating in exchange for a lighter sentence. Mr. Walters, did you create false medical documents for Matthew Palmer? Yes. What did these documents claim? That Sylvester Woods had cognitive impairment, dementia, that he was a danger to himself and needed guardianship. Was any of this true? No. I never met Mr. Woods. Never evaluated him. Matthew Palmer paid me $3,500 to create fake documents. Did you have any medical license or authority to make such an evaluation? No. I lost my paramedic license in 2019 for falsifying records. I've been running document fraud schemes since then. The courtroom went silent. Even Rothberg had no questions during cross-examination. What could he ask? When the testimony ended, Judge Hoffman didn't even need to deliberate. Based on the evidence presented, I find sufficient probable cause to bind these defendants over for trial on all charges: document forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Trial date to be set. Bail is continued with existing conditions. Restraining order remains in effect. She brought down her gavel. Kristen started crying. Not the angry sobs from before. These were hopeless, defeated sounds. Matthew just stared at the table, his face gray. Outside the courthouse, Martinez gripped my shoulder. They're finished. The trial is a formality at this point. No jury is going to acquit them after what we showed today. How long until trial? 3 to 4 months. But I'd bet money Rothberg will come back with a better plea offer. They'd be insane to go before a jury with this evidence. He was right. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. This time the offer was different. Matthew would plead guilty to all charges, except a 4-year prison sentence. Kristen would plead to accessory charges, except 2 years probation and community service. In exchange, they wanted nothing. No leniency, no victim impact statement, just an end to it. They're surrendering, Martinez said, completely. Will they actually serve the time? Matthew will. 4 years in a minimum security facility, probably out in 3 with good behavior. Kristen's probation means she stays out of prison if she complies with all conditions. Fails a drug test or misses community service, she goes to jail. I thought about it for a long time. A trial would be satisfying, watching them convicted publicly, hearing a jury declare them guilty. But it would also mean months more of this, months of seeing them, hearing their voices, reliving the betrayal. I'll accept the plea, I said finally, on one condition. What's that? I want to give a victim impact statement, not asking for leniency, just making sure the judge understands what they did. That's your right. I'll arrange it. The sentencing hearing came on a late summer morning. The courtroom was the same, but this time it felt different. Final, like the end of a very long, very dark chapter. Kristen and Matthew entered together, but they looked like strangers. Matthew's suit hung loose on him. He'd lost weight. Kristen's eyes were red-rimmed and empty. They sat at the defense table without touching, without speaking. Judge Hoffman reviewed the plea agreements, confirmed both defendants understood and accepted them. Then she looked at Martinez. I understand Mr. Woods wishes to make a victim impact statement? Yes, Your Honor. I stood up, walked to the podium. My notes were in my pocket, but I didn't need them. I'd been thinking about what to say for months. Your Honor, my name is Sylvester Woods. I'm 68 years old. For 2 years, I opened my home to my daughter Kristen and her husband Matthew. When they needed a place to live, I welcomed them without question, because that's what family does. What I didn't know was that they saw me as an obstacle, as a wallet with legs. They plotted to have me declared incompetent, to steal my home, to warehouse me in the cheapest facility they could find for $800 a month, while they disappeared with over $1 million of my assets. They forged medical documents. They paid criminals to create fake evaluations of my mental state. They planned every detail of how they'd rob me and discard me. And they did it in my own house, in my own garage, with smiles on their faces while they gaslit me into thinking I was losing my mind. I'm not asking for leniency. I'm not asking for mercy. They planned none for me. I'm simply stating facts so this court understands the depth of their betrayal. I looked directly at Kristen for the first time. She was crying silently, shoulders shaking. I raised my daughter to value honesty, integrity, hard work. I taught her woodworking, showed her how to restore beautiful things that others had discarded. I never imagined she'd see me the same way, something old and broken to be discarded. They didn't just try to steal my money. They tried to steal my dignity, my autonomy, my right to live freely in my own home. If my neighbor hadn't warned me, if I hadn't gathered evidence, I'd be sitting in some facility right now while they spent my life savings. That's what they wanted. That's what they planned. I folded my notes. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Matthew and Kristen. Stand, please. They stood. Matthew swayed slightly like he might fall. Kristen steadied herself on the table. I've been a judge for 16 years. I've seen many types of crimes. But elder abuse, when family members prey on their own, is particularly despicable. You, Ms. Palmer, betrayed your own father. You, Mr. Palmer, orchestrated a scheme to rob a man who'd shown you nothing but kindness. Matthew Palmer, you are hereby sentenced to 4 years in state prison, with credit for time served. Additionally, you will pay restitution of $15,000 to cover Mr. Wood's legal expenses and a fine of $50,000 to the state. You are also ordered to have no contact with Mr. Woods for the remainder of your natural life. Kristen Palmer, you are sentenced to 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and ordered to undergo mandatory counseling. You will also pay restitution of $10,000. And like your husband, you are prohibited from contacting your father ever again. If you violate probation in any way, you will serve 2 years in county jail. Do you both understand these sentences? Yes, Your Honor, they said in unison, their voices barely audible. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. 2 bailiffs approached Matthew. He looked at Kristen one last time, a look of pure desperation, but she was already being led away by her lawyer. They didn't even say goodbye to each other. As Matthew was led out in handcuffs, he turned and looked at me. Just for a second, his face was a mask of defeat. All that salesman charm gone, replaced by something hollow and broken. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it. What could he say? What words could possibly matter now? I watched him disappear through the side door, watched my daughter shuffle out with her lawyer, head down, shoulders hunched. Both of them looked smaller somehow, diminished, the weight of their own choices crushing them. Outside, the sun was shining. Martinez shook my hand. It's over. Truly over. Thank you. For everything. What will you do now? Go home. Water my orchids. Live my life. 2 weeks later, I sat in a different office. My lawyer's, but for a different purpose. We were finalizing my new will. Not the fake one Kristen and Matthew had forged, but my real one. $500,000 to the Oregon Woodworking Heritage Foundation, the lawyer read back. $200,000 to Eleanor Clark. The remaining assets to the Oregon Museum of Antique Furniture. Kristen Palmer is specifically excluded from any inheritance. Is this correct? Yes. You're sure? You could leave her something small, just in case. I'm sure. He made notes. This will is ironclad. No one can contest it successfully. Good. The money would go where it mattered. To young woodworkers learning the craft I loved. To Eleanor, who'd saved me. To preserving beautiful things for future generations. Not to people who'd tried to rob me. That evening I was in my greenhouse when I heard a knock. Mrs. Clark, holding 2 mugs of tea. Thought you might like some company, she said. We sat among the orchids, steam rising from our mugs. The greenhouse smelled like soil and flowers and life. How are you doing? She asked. Really? I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. The house is quiet, peaceful. Any regrets? I thought about it. Thought about Kristen as a child. laughing in my workshop. Then I thought about the woman who'd planned to lock me away like I was already dead. No, I said. Some things can't be forgiven. Shouldn't be forgiven. They made their choices, and those choices had consequences. That's not cruelty. That's justice. You're a strong man, Sylvester Woods. I'm a man who learned to spot rot. Took me too long with my own daughter, but I learned. She smiled. What will you do now? You have all this time, all this freedom. Keep working on my orchids. Maybe take up furniture restoration again. I've been getting requests. Visit that museum I'm leaving money to. Live quietly. That sounds perfect. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set through the greenhouse glass, painting everything orange and gold. My orchids looked beautiful in that light. Everything in its place. Everything carefully tended. I'd spent 40 years working with wood, learning to recognize weakness hiding under veneer, learning to spot decay before it showed on the surface. Should have applied those skills to people sooner, but better late than never. The house was mine again. My life was mine again. No more whispered conversations stopping when I entered rooms. No more fake concern masking real malice. No more looking over my shoulder in my own home. Just peace. Just quiet. Just the satisfaction of justice served. Some people might call what I did revenge, but revenge is emotional, destructive, about hurting others because they hurt you. What I did was simpler. I protected myself. I gathered evidence. I let the law handle it. Justice isn't revenge. Justice is just things being made right again. And for the first time in 2 years, things were right. I sipped my tea and smiled. The orchids needed watering tomorrow. The Victorian sideboard in my workshop needed its final coat of finish. Life was full of small, beautiful tasks, work that mattered, time that was mine. Kristen and Matthew had tried to steal all of that, but they'd failed, and now they were living with the consequences of that failure, while I was here, free, in my greenhouse, surrounded by things I'd grown with patience and care. That was the difference between us. They'd wanted everything immediately, no matter who they hurt. I'd learned patience, learned to wait for the right moment, learned to tend carefully to what mattered. In the end, patience always wins. Mrs. Clark raised her mug. To justice. I raised mine. To justice. The sun finished setting and the greenhouse filled with gentle darkness. But it wasn't scary. It was just evening, with tomorrow's work waiting, with life continuing forward exactly as it should. I'd survived, I'd fought back, I'd won, and that was enough. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.